Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun filled, action packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and all around evil scientist, DT from WX Risk, here in Central Virginia, the commander of chaos, Colonel Confusion, and Captain Catastrophe. Obviously, we're going to be talking about another edition here of Dorian and what's going on with the hurricane, so we're going to get right to it here. This is here is our topics for the day. We're going to obviously the eye of Dorian appears to miss Florida. That looks like that's going to happen. That's pretty much as the models forecast. Not a surprise, like I said last night. So far, so good. Dorian is going to weaken as it comes north, and then the focus is going to begin to shift here towards South Carolina, North Carolina, and Southeast Virginia over the next couple of days. So let's get right into it. This is the afternoon reconnaissance report. As you can see, notice that a couple things has happened here. The pressure is now, there's 940. You can see around 940 millibars right there, the lowest pressure. And the maximum flight level winds, there's the blue line here, about 110 knots. So it has definitely weakened some. And this is at the surface so far. We look at the blue line here, and that's around 100 knots. So it has weakened significantly. And the reason for that, of course, is because it's been stalled over the same area. And that produces a feature known as upwelling. So this is the latest radar plot here, and you can see that it has stalled. It's not doing much here. This is as of, I guess, 4 o'clock this afternoon, and it's stalled there over the central or western portions, excuse me, central or eastern portion of the Grand Bahama Island. And when it's stalled like that, you end up getting the upwelling. The winds just go around like this, and you cause the warm waters to be displaced by cold waters from underneath it. And as a result, you get upwelling, the water temperatures drop off. And this is what happens when you have a stalled hurricane after a while. For example, this here is the image from last night. You can see it was just approaching the far eastern portions of the Bahama Island. And then here it is here at midday. And it has not done much of anything. Look at that to that. That's a slow moving hurricane, folks. And then there's another image of that also I got from off a tour. You can see this here. This is 4:30 a.m. Let me get these set straight here. Make sure I got the right ones. Yeah. You can see where this was. Excuse me. This was 6:30 here. Okay, here I readjusted these images so you can see what was going on. But the first image is 6:30 o'clock, 6:30 Saturday night, and you can see where it is right here. Obviously, the eyes here, and this here is Grand Bahama Island. There it is. Okay, so that's where the image is. This is 11 o'clock, 11:30 last night, moving very slowly, but still moving west. And then this here is, oops, let me clear this out. And then this is this morning. It's 4:30 a.m. at 11:30 this morning. And noon. Very, very, very low movement. If anything, it's kind of drifted a little bit to the north. As you can see, it's moved away here from the coastal area of the south side of the island a little bit. This here is this midday here at noon, and you can see where the eye is very clearly. And again, they've highlighted a great image. You can see where the island is, and you can see there's the point, midpoint of the island, and it's right over to the east of the island. And then if we look several hours later, it hasn't moved. That's a stalled hurricane, folks. That's no way to get around it. That's what that is. And then you can see the implications here. The super dark gray area, the black area, which yesterday was all around the hurricane. As you can notice, it's much weaker here. And this whole part of the hurricane much weaker. It's mostly confined to this area. Still a very powerful hurricane, definitely category 4, but it is on weakening because of it's stuck. Now, you're looking at that, okay, and we begin to notice on the track of what's going to happen here. So this is the 2 o'clock track from Sunday afternoon. Excuse me. Yeah, and you can see from Monday afternoon, I should say, and you can see that it's parallel on the coast. That's not a change. And then the 5 o'clock advisory, while I was updating this, came out, so I put it in here. You can see very close to the coast the next 3 days, but not hitting the coast, paralleling it. And then as you go further out in time, you can see it going very close to Cape Hatteras, perhaps hitting Wilmington, perhaps hitting Morehead City, and perhaps hitting Hatteras, either to the west or to the east, and then passing well to the south and east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Now, when you get that sort of track here, what's going to happen is, the Weather Channel and I guess, other mainstream media sources, they're going to tell you how severe this is and how bad this is for the East Coast. And, their forecast is Jar Jar Binks. We's are going to die. And it's not going to be that bad for a couple of different reasons here. Now, I know I'm going to go out on a limb here, and some people are going to yell at me about this, but let's talk about this for a little bit. This here is the tropical storm force probabilities from the National Hurricane Center. And if you're in Hampton Roads, if you're in Northeast North Carolina, you're looking at 50 to 60% chance of seeing winds 40 miles an hour up to 72 miles an hour. That's not a huge probability. I mean, it's there, but it's not much. If you're in interior eastern North Carolina, if you are in Hampton Roads, you're 30, 40%. That's not a lot. So we'll see. Remember, winds are gusting up to 39 miles an hour or higher. So now, if you're by Hatteras, yeah, you have an excellent chance of that. Morehead City, Wilmington, sure. But just as soon as you go inland, and you can see this in the winds. This here is the wind forecast from the GFS here from the midday model, and you can see the hurricane force winds, all the brown stuff, the red color. Now these are max gusts. These are max gusts. Okay, for 10 meters above the ground, so about 40 feet above the ground, as you can see, just above the level of friction there. And for example, Richmond around 35 miles an hour, Raleigh, near 55, 60, 65 or greater, close to hurricane force, right along the coastal areas, right here. Nags at 71, Virginia Beach 56 miles an hour, Salisbury, Maryland 49 miles an hour. Most of the really big stuff stays off the coast. And on top of that, with the hurricane going like this, once you get here, you're going to be getting a north wind, which means your friction is really going to take its toll, and the winds really drop off as soon as you go inland. I mean, look how fast these winds drop off from here to here. So really big drop off in the wind. So, and we see at the GFS, the European showing the same sort of thing. In fact, the agreement with the wind speeds between the GFS and the European are really remarkable. And this may be because of the new improved GFS, the FV3, that finally got the kinks worked out of it. And I got to tell you, the winds usually see a big discrepancy on East Coast hurricanes in particular, or nor'easters, with the wind field between the GFS and the European, but not this time. And again, that might be because of the new FV3 finally getting its legs together, finally getting its act together, and seeing things, and it seems to be doing a lot better job. Notice the wind fields are almost identical in eastern Virginia, North Carolina, and the coastal areas. Now, the European does have a gust to 100 miles an hour, as you notice right here. Hatteras. There you go. And in 90 miles an hour down to Morehead City. And 75 right along Sandbridge right there. So there is some impact here, but generally very, very good agreement with the wind field. This here is the 12Z GFS hurricane models, all based off the GFS grid. These are the hurricane models based off the GFS grid. And you can see very strong agreement. Almost none of them now have it hitting Florida at all. And you can see they right over Hatteras, like clipping right along the southeast coast of North Carolina and then scooting out to sea. These are the 12Z ensembles. And they have shifted west here. Okay, so instead of doing what they were doing before, which was this, there's a shift here to the west. It's taking a somewhat wider turn, which brings it west of Hatteras. And that's an important point. That is a very important point for people in eastern North Carolina and southeast Virginia. Let's take a look at the models, how they're doing this now. Oops, I think I forgot one. Here we go. This is the European here from this afternoon, the European run. And again, also it has shifted west, very, very close to Hatteras. The vast majority of this data is clearly showing a very close passage, or either one side of Hatteras or the other side. At this point in time, 84 hours, 96 hours, I can't tell you what direction is going to pass relative to Morehead City, how close to Wilmington or Hatteras. Whether it's going to be over Hatteras, 50 miles east of Hatteras, 50 miles west of Hatteras. It's impossible to tell you. It'd just be a guess. So we just have to play it by ear until we get a little closer to the event. This here is a GFS. And this here is, this you can see for Wednesday morning. Now parallel on the coast. Look how slow it moves. It's right over here right now. This is Monday. Okay, Monday midday, the thing is right here, right? Look where it is Wednesday morning, 48 hours later. This is a slow moving hurricane. And what it's going to do is it's going to start sucking in dry air from Tennessee and Kentucky and Illinois, Alabama. It's going to get entrained into the system. So that's really going to affect the western half of the system along the coast. You see this all the time with slow moving hurricanes. And a lot of people ignore it, and they end up being surprised by how weak the west side of the hurricane is. I'm telling you. Okay, this is Thursday. Now there it is, fairly close to Myrtle Beach, Charleston, fairly close. Definitely blowing like hell here. Maybe hurricane force gusts are close to that, right on the Myrtle Beach, right here in South Carolina, and then approaching Wilmington and northern Myrtle Beach. But again, the western side of it, it's going to fall apart, I think, because it's moving so slowly. And then here's 2 o'clock on Friday morning. Now you can see, according to GFS, it's right over Hatteras or just to the west, passing into the Pamlico Sound after clipping Wilmington and Morehead City. Now there's a lot of rain here with this system, there's no doubt about that, but the rain shield, and you can see this really drops off to the west very, very sharply, and we'll get to the rain shield in a minute. And that's again because the dry air is being sucked in and being pulled into the hurricane, and the western side of it's going to collapse. I'm telling you, I see this a million times. You can be surprised how fast it's going to fall apart. And so if you're by Richmond, if you're in Raleigh, if you're in Greensboro, if you're in Columbia, if you're in Fredericksburg or Ashland or Farmville or Danville, you're going to go, what's the big deal? I'm telling you. So, all right. Slide 20, the next slide here. Now this is moving Friday morning, 8 a.m. It's now east of Hatteras. The rain is still going on over southeast Virginia, east of North Carolina, but it's rapidly pulling out to sea. And then it's gone, you can see, passing well to the south and east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Now that's the GFS. This here is the British model, which has done a fabulous job with this system, no doubt. This is now Thursday morning, 8 a.m. And then here we have Friday morning at 8 a.m. And you can see, bang on top of Morehead City. Clips Wilmington, slams into Morehead City. Pretty powerful hurricane here. Category 2, maybe a 3. Again, that's not taking into effect the dry air being entrained in the system. Probably a Category 2. And then it looks like it passes west of Hatteras and it goes over the Sounds, maybe close to Nag's Head. So that would be, this would be a more significant event for Chesapeake and Virginia Beach and Sandbridge and those areas, if that happens and it passes west of Hatteras. Also, it'd be a very big deal for Elizabeth City and Currituck and Nag's Head and Corolla and places like that. All right, now this is the European model. And here's the afternoon European model. There it is, 946 as a Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf Stream, chugging along on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. And then here it is, I've enlarged these so you can see it. This is now Friday morning, 8 a.m. Bang, again, you can see it just clips, according to this track, it just clips Wilmington, which is right here. So you can see it, that's Wilmington. And this is Morehead City and New Bern right there. So you can see it's just there. So Wilmington might be in the western eye wall. And then as you can see, it's right over Morehead City, New Bern. There's Hatteras right here. So it looks like it's going to pass either Hatteras or just to the west of Hatteras. Very, very tight. And the models are going back and forth with it. The early morning European model, as you can see, had it shifting back and forth. So this was the European model from this morning. And then make sure I got my models here correctly set up. Yeah, this was the one from this morning, and then this is last night. So you can see a little difference here. And again, you can see this is this morning's Friday morning, 8 a.m. And then this one is last night for the early Sunday morning run, early Monday morning run. You can see it's further east. So again, back and forth, the models go with this thing one way or the other. If we look at the rainfall here on the European model, this is showing, this is the early Monday morning, Labor Day here. You can see heavy, heavy rains, 5, 6, 8 inches in eastern North Carolina. But look how fast the rains drop off. Richmond, 1/4 of an inch. Are you kidding me? Hampton Roads, 6 inches. Look at this. And Wild Island, Salisbury, and then nothing in the middle of very little in the middle of Delmarva Peninsula. Same sort of thing. East of Raleigh, 2 inches. West of it, Greensboro, 6/10 of an inch. Very, very sharp cutoff to the rain here. 12Z European, not much different, showing the same sort of thing. GFS from early Monday morning here at September 2nd, you can see the same sort of thing. Super heavy rains, 8 inches in Hampton Roads, you can see that. An inch in Richmond, a little wetter, up to 6 inches in Raleigh. And then if you look at the afternoon run, it's dropped off a little bit over the interior. It's still about the same over eastern North Carolina and southeast Virginia. Very sharp cutoff. And the reason the key piece to this, again, I talked about yesterday, this is The September 1st. So this was Sunday's European model. And the piece of energy which is going to kick this thing off the coast is this feature right here. See this? All right. Now this is the updated version of the same time frame. Friday morning, 2 a.m. Here we go. Much stronger. That feature is much stronger. Friday morning, 2 a.m. This is a much stronger feature. Now maybe that'll change. So what that does is that kicks it a little further off the coast because that system is stronger. If it comes in weaker, it could go past west. The Dorian could end up going west of Hatteras. It's just that up in the air. I can't tell you one way or the other. It's too far out in time. There are too many variables. It's too chaotic. I just can't. I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you I know when I don't. One way or the other side of Hatteras, that's the important feature. Okay, in summary, let's get to it here. The summaries. Folks, I have to clear this out. There you go. One of the rules of East Coast hurricane forecasting is that all things being equal, hurricanes will hug the coast rather than go inland. Now, there are exceptions to that, as we know. Isabel, Hazel, back in 1954, Connie, Diana in the 55 hurricane season. But the typical hurricane is like Belle or Gloria or Floyd, where they hug the coast and they don't come inland. That's because something has to force a hurricane to come inland, and we don't have that in this situation at all. Point number two, the model agreement is very, very strong. The Dorian will parallel the southeast coast with the west eye wall clipping or very close to Wilmington, Morehead City, New Bern. Now, point number three, slow moving East Coast hurricanes always suck in tons of dry air from the interior of the U.S. and cause upwelling. And also, again, like if you read the 5 o'clock discussion from the Hurricane Center, they talk about that one of the reasons why Dorian is weakened this afternoon is because it's over the same area of water, and the warm water is getting churned around, and you're getting colder water from deeper in the ocean coming up to the surface. This is called upwelling, and it can affect slow-moving hurricanes, whether it's in the Gulf of Mexico or in the open Atlantic or coming up the East Coast. And since Dorian is going to be a slow-moving hurricane, you're going to have to we have that negative feature which is going to impact its ability to stay strong. So we have the dry air and the upwelling. So keep those two features in mind. All right. Point number four. The key for East and North Carolina and Southeast Virginia is Hatteras. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Where does Dorian's eye go with respect to Hatteras? To the west or to the east? Big difference. If it passes west of Hatteras, this should be point number five. And it goes through the North Carolina Sounds, that's going to be the worst case for East North Carolina and Southeast Virginia. If it passes east of Hatteras, this is not going to be a big deal for you folks. So it's a big difference here in that relationship to Hatteras. So anyway, and finally, in closing, I do want to point out that there is another disturbance that's come off Africa. A very strong probability it's going to develop. You can see this feature right here. Oops, I'll call my marker out. Okay, another one right here in the Gulf. That's not a big deal. Now this one looks like it's going to go out to the Atlantic and curve away. It's not maybe a threat, but the Hurricane Center is also, well, let me show you what that looks like here. This is very pronounced, very likely to develop, and you can see here, you see the feeder bands going like this, and you see this band here wrapping in. This has clearly got a twist. We call it cyclonic circulation, low pressure here, wrapping into the system. There's another system here coming in from Africa, which is going to be further south, and you can see it here. It's probably going to be this system, and the Hurricane Center is worried about that one in particular. So this one, if you can't see the marker, that one in particular. So that one might also be an issue down the road as well. It's hurricane season, folks. What are you going to do, right? Anyway, this is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk, and you can always catch me over on the Twitter page or on the Facebook page. I'll talk to you soon.